everyone, it's Cindy and welcome back to my channel, or if it is your first time here then thank you so much for joining me. Please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any of my videos, and if you've already subscribed make sure you hit the little bell next to it. It will give you notifications when I upload videos, and that way you won't miss out on anything. So thank you so much for joining me today. The video we're going to be doing today is a vlog, and it's a very personal one for me. I'm talking about my depression and how I recovered. And so it's one of those videos that's quite emotional for me, and I share a lot of my very personal story. So if you are into that and you would like to find out more about how I overcame depression, and maybe, you know, find out how you might be able to help yourself or any loved ones who have depression, then just keep watching. And before you go into that, just to let you know, the quality is a bit different with this video because I filmed it in the living room on my phone, and it's a very grey day today, which you can't tell on this camera because it's really good quality, but for some reason it's come out kind of grainy, and but I don't want to redo it because I feel like it went really well and I shared what I needed to share. So just so you know, there'll be a little bit of a drop in quality. Okay, just keep watching. Okay, so it's a wet, rainy, grey day in May, and I thought to myself, what better day could I choose to talk about depression? And I know that might sound odd, but I know that this kind of weather can make people feel depressed, or people who are depressed feel worse. And it's also a really positive story that I've got to share about how I recovered from depression, how I overcame it, how I continue to overcome it because it still tries to get hold of me. And so I thought today I would share some of my story for those of you who don't know, haven't met me, or haven't heard anything about me before. And if it helps one person to feel like they're not alone, then it'll be worth it for me. Gosh, that makes me feel emotional. So, I'm not going to say suffered. I used to get depression kind of on and off throughout my whole adult life, and I didn't realise what it was at the time. When I first started getting depression, I was probably in my teens, but I didn't know what it was. And then when I was first ever diagnosed with depression, it was when I had postnatal depression after I was diagnosed after my second child, and then obviously they were looking out for it with my third. Now for me, that was a very different experience to the other kind of depression that I would get. So for me, postnatal depression was very angry, very red hot. I used to flip out over silly things, and our remote control was stuck together with sellotape where I'd thrown it across the room because it had been, you know, the thing in my hand when I'd flipped and I'd thrown it. So that was handled with medication. I got better, and I'm spilling my drink everywhere. And it was just one of those things that they just needed to look out for. As I'm not having any more children, that's not an issue. I'm just licking hot chocolate off my fingers. Excuse me. I have a hot chocolate here in my mug, so I thought we could sit down and be all cozy together. I later became aware that I had periods when I was obviously not very well. I was very low, but still didn't realise what it was because it was so different to postnatal depression that I didn't recognise it as being anything related to that word. And then I was in my 30s when I was in a job that was kind of the opposite of my kind of job. It was very detail focused. It was very kind of mundane, day in, day out. It was in a very quiet, subdued kind of environment, and I found it really hard, and it started to get on top of me. And it wasn't until one day I'd had a particularly bad day in the office. I would get to the point where I was okay if people were asking me stuff about work, it was fine, but if someone said to me, "Are you okay?" Oh God, that would set me off, and I'd say, "Don't be nice to me." And those of you who know me will know that that is still something I say sometimes when I'm on the edge, which we all are sometimes. So I'd had a particularly bad day, and I was on my way out, and I bumped into someone I'd worked with on a previous project who didn't even recognize me, because I was so down and low and different, not my usual self. So he, God bless him, he sat down with me for probably nearly an hour, chatted with me, encouraged me to get help from the within the place where I worked. You could tap into some sort of counselling and things like that. So I did. And he encouraged me to go to the doctor, which I did. And that was when I found out I had depression. I filled in one of those questionnaire things, and the score said, yes, I was definitely had depression. Isn't that funny? We have that phrase, suffering from depression, as if it's like a thing that's kind of put on you. It's weird. It's a weird phrase, suffering from depression. Like, if you know anything about language, linguistics, and how they affect the way we think, I think that's a really unfortunate way to talk about it. But it's still there, obviously, in my vocabulary. It's something that we hear all the time. Anyway, I digress. So I went on to medication, and it over time seemed to help. I had a bit of counselling. I didn't really enjoy that so much, but gradually I got better and things started to get on an even keel. The thing about being depressed, when I was depressed, I felt like I was on my own, like nobody could ever understand how I was feeling, and that made me not want to talk to people about how I was feeling. And the depression kind of made me shut myself away, not see people, not reach out to people, which even made me feel even more alone, because you shut yourself away, you see less people, you feel more alone. And that's one of the sort of the traps of depression, really, is that it makes you feel like you're alone. You shut yourself away more, then you feel more alone, and it's like a self-fulfilling cycle. And the other main thing I remember from when I was depressed would be the overwhelming exhaustion. Gosh, I'd be so exhausted, to the point where, I'd feel like I could barely lift an arm. And the most exhausting thing would be like to be around people that you love, family, friends, even the kids, because I had to be normal, had to seem normal in front of those people. Well, that's what I felt like, that I had to seem normal. And being normal at that time, when I was so not normal, not myself, used up so much energy, it was exhausting. So I used to sleep for maybe 12 hours, 16 hours sometimes. I just could never get enough sleep. I was so exhausted. And so when, people are depressed and they don't get out of bed, they kind of loll about a bit, it's not because they're moping. It's not that they're wallowing. They're just exhausted. It's absolutely exhausting. So anyway, this cycle of being on antidepressants, coming off them, being a bit better for a while, then something triggering another bout of depression, and going back on medication. This just went on and on and on and on. And in the meantime, I changed jobs. That didn't solve it really, because I was still me with all of my stuff, and I still used to get depressed. And finally, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity of redundancy happen to me. And I'm so grateful that it did, because even though at the time it was a horrible experience, looking back on it, if that hadn't have happened, I never would have set up my business. So I am forever grateful for that happening. But at the time, it was a really hard experience. I was really low. I tried setting up a coaching business, and because I was so poorly, it just didn't work. I was so poorly, and I flogged it for as long as I could, and that poor horse was dead for years. It was a good couple of years I tried, and it just didn't work. I wasn't able to help other people really, because I needed to help myself first. How often do we hear that thing about, you know, put your oxygen mask on before you try and help other people on an airplane? And we hear it all the time, but do we listen? Do we take it on board? Quite often we don't. Not until something makes us, forces us to do it. So I tried and tried and tried, and it didn't work. Eventually I had to take the decision to shut that business down. It wasn't working. Just draw a line under it. Didn't know what I was going to do next. Had no idea. And, you know, all of that stuff triggered more depression, really helpful. And I was feeling really, really low, like the lowest I've ever been ever. And when I was that low, I got the flu, proper flu, where, you know, you can barely get out of bed. And I was really, really poorly for a couple of weeks. Got over that, and then I had like a post-viral thing. So I was just I was exhausted, physically, mentally, everything exhausted. I had nothing left. I was as low as I could possibly be. And a friend of mine, Sheila, was running a new workshop. And I'd said I'd go along and be a participant to help her out and give feedback and all that kind of stuff, which you do when you're, you know, running a new event. And I went along to this event, and it was very introspective and looking at what you want to achieve, what you haven't achieved yet, the ways that you're stopping yourself from getting what you want. And I cried all day. I was really quite sorry for the other people on the course, but they were all lovely. But at the end of it, we had to do something really powerful, and we had to write ourselves a letter. So I wrote myself a letter, and I've included it. I've written actually a book for people with depression, and in it I've included a complete reproduction of this letter. And it said something along the lines of, "Dear Cindy, the stars have converged, the universe has spoken. Now is the time for you to do something about this stuff. Whatever this stuff is that's keeping you getting depressed all the time." Because I knew that there was something underneath it that was causing me to keep getting depressed. I was beginning to feel that this was something I was doing. Depression was something that was happening because I couldn't cope with this stuff that I'd been carrying around. And some of the stuff I knew what it was, and some of it, you know, clearly I wasn't aware of. So I wrote in that letter that I needed to get help, that I couldn't do it all on my own, which is what I'd been trying to do. Don't we often do that? Try and do it all ourselves. I was reluctant to ask for help, but I told myself in that letter I needed to ask for help, speak to someone I trust, and JFDI. If you don't know what that means, go and Google it. But I just needed to get on and do it. So I did. I contacted my friend Reb, who is the person I learned NLP and mBraining from. At that point, I hadn't learned mBraining, but she had just learned it. So I had some sessions with Reb. She used mBraining with me, which I will do a video on. Bear with me, I will get around to doing that, but there's so many videos I want to make. But mBraining is about getting your head, your heart and your gut all working together. Because when we have issues, it's usually because there's a block between the communication between all three of those brains. All three? Well, some or all of them. So anyway, I had this mBraining, and I started to get better, and then I started introducing my feel-good routine that I did in the mornings, and I've just put out a video. I don't know when this is going to be, like a few days later or something, but I've just put out a video of my morning routine, which I have tweaked since with after reading The Miracle Morning, but you can find that video. I'll put a little link up here and in the description. So I started doing this morning routine. It was keeping me feeling good. I was doing tapping, I was doing mBraining, meditation, which is my #1 feel-good tip. And I was doing all of these things and getting better and better and feeling really well, and depression seemed like a thing of the past, and everything was going brilliantly. And people kept asking me if they could have some of what I had, if, you know, what's that thing you're doing? I need to know so that I can get some too, and so that I can be happy like you. So I started sharing what I've been doing, working with clients again, even though I hadn't really planned to have another business. And that's how the Feel Good Coach came about. So I began working with clients. I'm still on my own journey, the J word. But you know, I'm working through my own stuff. All the things I tell my clients to do, I'm doing too. All the things that come up for them, come up for me too. We're all in this together. We're all on our own path, and we're all learning all the time. So I'm pleased to say that it's been about 3 years, I think, since ever I was last feeling depressed or needing antidepressants. So that's a brilliant achievement for me. I'm so chuffed. I'm not saying I don't have to work at it. Some days are harder than others. Rainy, grey days aren't always easy, but I have tactics. I have things I can do that help me to keep feeling good as much of the time. Now, the thing about the Feel Good Coach is it's not about, I'm not saying we have to feel good every single day. You know, if someone dies or something awful happens, of course, you're not going to feel good and happy on that day. You might need some time to process, to work through, to allow the emotions to come up. But what it's about is actually being more resilient, bouncing back when things go wrong, being able to cope with whatever life sends our way, and having a general feeling of happiness and joy and well-being. And that's what I've got now. A general feeling of happiness and well-being. That's how I feel most of the time. It's my default. And then occasionally, every now and again, things go wrong. Things happen. People happen. And it'll knock me off my perch for a little bit. But I jump back up so much more quickly than I ever did before. And I don't need medication to do that. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who's on medication should stop. Good God, I'm not saying that at all. If you're on medication, you need it, of course, that's fine, whatever you need. But if you're looking for a way of, you know, doing this without medication, then, you know, just know that there are ways that you can help yourself or support yourself even alongside medication. We don't always have to take tablets. So yeah, disclaimer, do not stop taking tablets if you've been told to. I don't want to be responsible for anyone making themselves poorly. Anyway, I've rambled quite a lot. I've talked about my depression recovery, and hopefully it's let you know that, well, first of all, you're not alone. Other people, so many people experience depression. As soon as you open up and tell people that you've had depression, you'll find that nearly everyone has either had depression in some form or another, or knows someone close to them who has. So people understand a lot more than you think they're going to. And another thing is that, you know, even if they don't understand, we still need to be talking about this. We still need to be reaching out and asking for help, explaining wherever we can, so that depression becomes one of those things that we can talk about freely and help each other do something about. So if you've got a friend who has depression, or if you've got depression, there are so many ways that you can just gently help them to climb up out of that pit that, you know, are easy to do and really, really help. I'll link to a few of my other videos, some of my how-to videos down there in the description box. So that's my story of recovering from depression. If you'd like to know more, then by all means get in touch with me. I'll make sure my email address is down below in the description box, or you can write in the comments. I hope this has helped. If it has helped in any way, then do please let me know. I would love to know it's helped somebody. And even though it's a grey day, as my client said to me as she was leaving the house today, up above all those clouds, it's a beautiful, sunny, blue sky. So always remember that and hang on to that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will look forward to speaking to you really soon. I'm going to go back to my hot chocolate now. So there you have it. That's my story of recovering from depression. I'm quite nervous about putting this out there in this way because obviously it's a bit different to some of my other videos, but I just wanted to share it with you. If it helps one person to know that, you know, you're not alone, if you feel depressed, it's okay. There's stuff you can do, and people understand, and just reach out and talk to someone if you need to. So I hope you found this useful. Please share it with anyone who you think will benefit from my story, and I love you so much. Thank you for following me on my channel and for supporting me and being so brilliant. And I will speak to you on the next video. Have a fabulous day.